evening, good evening, good evening. Who kicks you in the family jewels but gives you a Milky Way bar for your troubles? It's us, the ASTV Thursday night crew for American Scouser TV. As always, it's international break week, which means we have to do something a little bit different, and that's what we always do when there is no proper soccer to be watching. Although England did lose today to Greece and Ireland did win against Finland, so a reasonably good day for me and Irish people everywhere. Have that in your pipe and smoke it, Declan Rice, Lee Carsley and Jack Grealish. But we're joined as always by Brian and Trevor, and there are no people I would rather go down the adventure we're going to go down for the last half of this show than you two gentlemen. Brian, how are you this week?
Doing pretty good, besides being having an allergy test today and being poked about a good 50 sometimes on my arms. But yeah, other than that, I'm doing great.
Trevor, how are you doing?
Zero pokes, but doing great. The international break is always a trying time for these broadcasts, but we're gonna make the best of it in the best way that we possibly can.
Brian, our enduring fans want to know, how's the nose?
It's fantastic. I can breathe, I can smell, I can do all kinds of cool stuff like that now. But yeah, so
you can breathe in all that sweet pollen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And guess what I'm allergic to? Fucking pollen. So yeah. So you name the weed and tree, I'm allergic to it at the moment. So, but yeah. So, but other than that, Alan, doing great right there. Thanks for asking. Appreciate it.
So let's see what we're going to talk about on today's show. We're going to talk a little bit about Klopp's move to Red Bull, in a role that was previously held by a former Liverpool manager, Gerard Houllier. May you rest in peace, a sainted man. Then we'll give a little report card. I think we may have done this before on one of the shows on Arnie Slot, how he's doing so far, where possibly he could improve and where we should not touch things that are working. And then for the second half, because it's International Week, we'll talk about the best 80s action movie, a VHS special, or Amazon Prime as it is these days. But you know, we can't ignore the greatness of cinema that occurred only in the period between 1981 and 1991, and we will address it tonight. Trevor says, "Nice plant. It's there. It's living. It's not plastic. It may be dead by the end of this show, but at least we've seen it at the start, because that's how things go around here."
I put potting soil in it.
There you go. Trevor's looking after everything here. So let's go with the first topic. Jurgen Klopp is the Red Bull head of global soccer or some such title. Brian, I said in our Discord channel, which everybody should be involved in, and also make sure you're liking and subscribing and tapping or smashing that like button on YouTube and following us on all of the social medias. But my thought on the Klopp thing is that it's largely a ceremonial role. It's almost like being the president of Ireland. We have a whole parliament and we have a prime minister who actually runs the country. Then we have a president who gets to shake hands with the dignitaries whenever they arrive. I don't believe Klopp is going to be doing anything other than being the face of global expansion, probably for Red Bull. I believe they've brought a stake in Leeds fairly recently. So you could see that kind of a plan. And who better to have as the face of that plan than one of the most successful managers of his generation? He said he wasn't going to get back into coaching. We kind of guessed it wasn't going to be too long before he would get back into football in some way. It is an addiction. That's why we're here on Thursday nights, not spending time with our families. But Brian, what do you think of it? Is this something Liverpool fans should get choked up about a little bit, or is this actually exactly what he probably needed after the 9 years at Liverpool?
But, you know, it's like, I guess when we all talked about when he actually left our role as our head coach, that that it wasn't only going to be a matter of time to fire. He found a type of a job that's still in football, but not really coaching and doesn't have the stress of football. I figured that it would be some kind of a director of like kind of like Gerard Houllier did with you, and like Arsene Wenger has like with his current role with that, development of the football and like in Europe, or working on Arsene Wenger just tinkering with a bunch of shit and then hoping that it like or throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks, that he does with UEFA. But I think this is a perfect job for Jurgen. If the commitment's still there, kind of where he is able to talk and represent what Red Bull stands for. Still talks football, but he doesn't have the day-to-day vigor that and stuff like that you have to deal with as being a head coach or a director of football operations or any of those type of roles that are directly involved. So I think it's a good move. I know that the Dortmund supporters are definitely not very happy about it from what I read right there, because especially since they have a very different philosophy than what Red Bull has right there as far as their ownership and because the whole German rule with the ownership, and they think that Red Bull kind of infringes on that type of thought processes. But as a Liverpool supporter, good for Jurgen. I know he wants to do something. I know he doesn't want to get away from football. And what better role to this be? Dance around throughout the place. Hey, I'm Jurgen. I represent Red Bull, and then shake a couple hands, then go home. Sounds like a good deal to me.
Trevor, it could be said that if Klopp wanted to be involved in the game without having to coach, he could have always gone to Manchester United or Everton. There's very low stakes there. But I believe, and this is probably just paper talk, there may be a clause in whatever his contract is that says he can leave for the German national team, which I think, if that is true, that is one thing where we said, I believe, at least, that you wouldn't mind that. International football is a whole different thing. Whereas if he became the next Man City manager or Chelsea manager or any other manager like a month later, that would kind of be a kick in the family jewels, essentially. But this is almost like the best compromise possible, isn't it?
Yeah, and from just everything I've read, he's basically a figurehead. He's an ambassador. He's somebody that you can send to pretty much any country that Red Bull is trying to make inroads in, plus ones that they also have a stake in. That he's a guy that is just gregarious, and whether it be for like just for the club itself or for the like attempted Bundesliga expansion, they're not trying to reach La Liga levels yet, where they're trying to play regular season games in America, but the Bundesliga is trying to expand their reach, and having a guy at one of like the top 5 clubs with Klopp's persona can't hurt. And it's something that, I understand that Dortmund fans will kind of be not too keen to it, just because of, like you said, that clash in ideals. But I don't see it as something where there's really any negatives to it. He's not doing anything, like Brian said, he's not doing anything day to day. He's not in the proverbial trenches. He's just a guy that is there to kind of promote the brand and really just be a cheerleader for, what is it, like 5 or 6 teams that Red Bull has under their umbrella right now. And if you want anybody fist pumping for your clubs, it's Jurgen Klopp.
Brian, just double check there to make sure my numbers are right. Gerard Houllier did that self-same job for 8 years, and Gerard Houllier did that self-same job for 8 years with an incredibly challenging heart problem, which eventually killed him, sadly. But that kind of gives it a measure of how low of the lowest of stresses this job is going to be for Jurgen Klopp, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think I need a job like that. Sounds like a fantastic opportunity, in my opinion.
Should I change my LinkedIn profile? Can I get in on this shit?
No shit. But yeah, but I mean, how could you not complain about a job like that? You just go basically and sit and like, except for watching the shit football that Leeds plays. I mean, besides that, right there, I mean, you just go to New York, look at Red Bull, and Red Bull New York or New Jersey or wherever the hell they play at, which I think is New Jersey. Go there and hang out there for a little bit. Go there and hang out in in Leipzig or Salzburg, stuff like that. I mean, great job. I mean, you just go and travel, but the commitment has to be so minimal right there. You probably just like, hey, we're having like a couple executives over here. Do you mind coming in for a little or for a day or so? Sure, I'll come in, shake a couple hands, do a couple autographs, fly out, go there, go back to the beach or whatever I was doing before then. Sounds like a perfect job to me. I'm all in. Hey, if anybody wants to sign me up for that type of opportunity, I am definitely available.
And then finally, Trevor, if he should go to the German national team, do you think it may be a thing? Is that job, the new job, low level enough that he could probably still do that while being the German national manager?
Yeah, and that's all up to the DFB at that point. I don't think he wants that job unless they throw an absolute Godfather offer at him. It seems that he's happy to kind of be on the periphery of the game. Like, we knew that he was going to be in one of these positions just because he loves the sport so much, where he was going to kind of get into one of these ambassadorial roles. But yeah, if it's something where the DFB are struggling so much and they just go, hey, Jurgen, how does 20 million a cycle per year of the cycle sound? I know this is unprecedented, but oh my God, we need to just send Nagelsmann on a ship into the sun. Yeah, that's I think that's the only thing that's really going to lure him away, and the fact that it I guess has a clause in his thing where he can kind of leave the door open, so when he's not doing training sessions or camps or matches with the German national team, he could come back and just kind of go through the turnstiles however he saw fit. If that is something that works for him in those given instances, potentially down the road, go for it. I don't really see that there's going to be any harm to his reputation at this point, because for Germany, really, there's nowhere to go but up with this current generation. So if he came in, I think there would be, more than anything, a cleaning out of the old guard. But in the end, I don't see him taking that job within at least 2 or 3 years. It's going to take some seismic shifts in both the Red Bull structure, also with the German national team before the World Cup, for him to even have that opportunity at his feet.
From a manager who was under pressure and is now looking for a relaxing job to a manager who is currently under pressure but looks like he has a relaxing job, except for that one time there in the last game with the referees and the penalty, non-penalty or non-free kick, whatever it was. Arne Slot, we've had 2 international breaks now with him, and we're top of the league going into this. It means nothing right now because it's only game 8 or whatever it is. So we're not too far into it enough to be making any huge judgments, Brian. But we can see a lot now about what Arne Slot is all about. So if you're going to give him a report card, what do you think his strengths have been, his weaknesses, what opportunities does he have, and what threats are there to his position, and what overall grade would you give him now that we've seen a little bit more and that we are doing a good job in the league, at least?
Okay, so to start off right there, his strengths are there. I definitely think that one of his strengths is going into is definitely his organizational skills And because you can tell right there that from switching over to a clock type of system, which is a more of a pressing Geiger, like that Geigen pressing, and they go there to adjust the players right there to have to a more possession base right there. His ability to shift these players to have that mentality has been fantastic. Some of his opportunities. I really think right there the biggest opportunity that he had was looking at the Nottingham Forest match was the ability to come there to break down a side that's willing to absorb. So I think that will, and I can't really say that's so much on his coaching, but so much of not having the right players to come there to be able to a creative type of players to move that, namely a number 10 right there to actually give more creativity to that. Overall, I think I can go there and give him a good solid A. I mean, I can't really go A plus because I mean, definitely with the loss to Nottingham Forest, but for the expectations that all of us, that so many supporters went into this, thinking that it was going to be a struggle for him to put his brand of football into this Liverpool side, and for him to achieve the amount of wins that he has. I mean, it's amazing. But I think that what we're going to do is like you said, this is early, so we have to go see what's going to happen after this next international break. I think that will be the big litmus test right there to see where we are as a side and where we go forward, especially with the being able to adapt to change. Namely, no Allison now for probably till probably December time frame, something like that for the last time report. Because I'm looking at, they said possibly 6 weeks right there now for him. Harvey Elliott should be bumping back into the side in November, and I want to see how that works. So again, solid A. I'd say definitely for right now for my current report.
Do you see any threats, Brian, to his position?
Not at all. I don't really see any threats at all because I think that you have to. I think that he's his type of man management skill is totally different from Jurgen Klopp's. I mean, I think that it's like I said last week right there, by taking away the title of manager and putting him as head coach, it leveled the playing field a lot more right there with him as far as him to the players. Because I think that if you look back at the relationship that Pep Linders had with the side, he was the head coach where Jurgen Klopp was the manager. I think by ending that position right there of head of a manager and putting it down to like that level of a coach right there, it actually goes there and gives his job a little bit of easier aspects right there, because he doesn't have to deal with the day-to-day operations right there, which are handled above him. His job right there is to coach. So is there a threat to his position? Absolutely not. I think that everybody's happy with the results. I think they're happy with what we're going forward. I think that everything's in the ballpark of the people in front and ahead of him to make sure he gets the right signings and the right re-signings to come through for him to succeed.
Trevor, before we get to you, here's what I'm thinking. In terms of strengths, I think one of them is that he is his own person, and that he is not trying to be Klopp. I think we worried a little bit about that before the season, but he's just being Arnie Slot. He's just quiet and reserved unless a referee does the referee things that they do. His opportunities are that he has a very good tactical brain, and we haven't been used to that for 9 years, probably longer actually, because Rodgers didn't have a great tactical brain either. It's almost like a nice mix of Rafa, and actually the best comparison is probably Paisley to Shankly, because Shankly was a very direct kind of coach, and then Paisley comes in and starts deciding, we don't have to go forward every time we get the ball in Europe. Maybe we just keep it for a bit. So I think that's a great opportunity for him. In terms of his weaknesses, I think not knowing where his number 9 goals are going to come from right now is probably the biggest weakness, which is not a bad weakness to have when everybody else is putting the ball in the net for you. And in terms of threats to his, I think that the big games, we have Chelsea and Arsenal up at, don't we, after the international break. I mean, those are the threats. If he doesn't do well in those two, I think we may fall be in danger of falling apart. But that would be the biggest test then. But Trevor, and I would give him an A minus maybe just because of the Forest game. We should have hockeyed them into the middle of the next millennium. But Trevor, what say you? What do you see as his strengths so far, his weaknesses, his opportunities, his threats, and what grade would you give him?
I'm going to parrot your grade of an A minus. I think the Forest loss was yeah, we all sat there. I looked like a big fucking dummy when it came to that one, but it was something where I think it was kind of a wake up call for him to the league, because in the Dutch league, the lower teams, as much as they want to do that, they can't. So you can just impose your will against the less talented sides in the Eredivisie. Whereas now he's like, oh crap, they're just going to put 10 people in a fortress and just kind of have one guy hanging out up top, like, hey, just if you get one counterattack, yeah, I'm here, I'm hanging out. And I think really against Palace, they attempted to do the same. They just didn't have the structure to do it. Whereas Forrest really bought into Nuno's, we know we're going to touch the ball 8 times over the course of 25 minutes. But when we touch the ball those 8 times, it's going to get into their box. Crystal Palace is, we're going to just sit here and try to like sit back and get there. And then they kind of had the same struggles with number 9s that a lot of teams have had. But in the end, I think he's a guy that is learning, not necessarily learning on the fly, but he's all these experiences that are coming his way with the concessions of early goals. There's something where there's not that head drop anymore. Whereas last year especially, and as a person who is habitually late to the bar, walking in and seeing 1-0 to the bad guys on the scoreboard, and Jurgen Klopp just going, oh, God, where everything's going wrong. And then there's just no real answer to those early concessions. Slot seems kind of calm about it, where he just goes, I know that what I'm bringing to the table is going to bear fruit as long as just it's done correctly. And in terms of just the way the roster is deployed, the only things that I have like a bit of a gripe about is, and it's a super nitpick, and it's probably just a me thing, his loyalty to the same 11 over and over and over and over again when we don't have the best of depth. I'd say yes, our bench is great, our starting lineup is great, but when winter comes and those injuries come thick and fast, yep, Allison's already on the shelf. What are we going to do when that happens? And he is ran Alexis McAllister, who's going to play no less than 70 minutes in every single Argentina game, into the ground, and refuses to give Szoboszlai, despite the fact that he can't get out of his own way, any sort of reprieve. And then he's going to go be the captain of his national team. It has to come a point where you have to almost force that rotation in just to save your best players from themselves, because there is going to come a point where it's 3 games a week for like 4 or 5 weeks. And if you can't can't strike a proper balance with your rotation through that, we got a lot of fragile dudes on this roster, and we're going to be in for a world of fucking hurt.
Brian, before we move on to the next one from you for Arnie Slot, do you think at this point, and I'll ask the same question to Trevor, but do you think at this point Arnie Slot has made his mark on his team and his team is Arnie Slot's team rather than a still constant fade between Jurgen Klopp and his own ideas?
Yes and no, because I still see some players still doing still going astray from the game plan, and you can see this. You can see right there, even with the animation behind there with Arnie Slot sometimes with it. I mean, for instance, like that we talked in the post match with Simicast going there, going into the middle, and Trick going into the middle a lot right there, which is definitely not a part of the game plan that usually Slot runs with. So. And of course, always frustration with it wouldn't be Thursday without mentioning Darwin Nunez. Still kind of doing that same type of a role that he has right there, that he had with Klopp right there, with trying to move towards setting up play right there, where with the ball instead going out from the middle to the edge and then back in right there, which you see with Slot's plan goes. So I think that yes, I mean you can tell with that Gravenberch and McAllister definitely are on that game plan right there with it. I think that you still have Szoboszlai still is not quite on that plan. I still think he does a lot more running and more forward movement. But again, I guess I could say right there, even with what we talked about, our criticisms that we had with Szoboszlai, I don't quite know exactly what his role is and what he's been told to do. But it doesn't seem like it's the same type of plan that you saw in Feyenoord that Slot ran right there. So I think that, yes, there are players who are on the page. I mean, I think that probably from the pivot back, I think is definitely on the page. I think the problem right there goes up beyond the pivot right there when you're dealing with the Szoboszlai, some Mo stuff, some Diaz stuff right there, those guys right there. I mean, in that ballpark right there, I think I still have a little bit of the Klopp hangover left in them right there. But I mean, all in all, I still think, yes, this is Arnie Slot's team, and I think that he is getting across, but there's like those little moments where things go astray.
Trevor, same question to you. Do you think he has imposed his will enough on this team that if you were a casual fan and saw the players playing without understanding who the manager was, you go, this is not Jurgen's team now. This is definitely the new manager's team.
I absolutely feel that way. I think this is something where he's a guy that doesn't have to be the rip-roaring taskmaster, but he has kind of let his actions speak more than his words, and just going, hey, these guys are, whatever it be in training or just conversations you have with players, are going, this is what I'm going to do. And if you can just do what I ask of you, you're going to be just fine. If we end up, it doesn't work out, I'm not going to throw you under the bus. I am not going to really just railroad people. And people still want to point back to the Kwanzaa getting yanked early on. And it's just like, oh, man, he just goes after the young kid. In my eyes, with that, if him pulling off Kwanzaa for Konate in that instance was something where he just didn't see anything special in Kwanzaa, I don't think they would have resigned him to a contract. If that would have been a sign where it was just like, oh, this kid stinks, we just kind of like took from what the end of last season was and we tried to run it back to start the year and it didn't work. I think it was just kind of an in that moment thing where there needed to be a change. And just what Kwanzaa has shown internationally and the way that he's been just as a substitute, he's been a guy that's never really like put his head down and it may just give him a bit of humility, and it may be a thing where going forward, it works out better for him because now he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he knows that every time he goes out for like 25 minutes, he has to bust his ass. And I've viewed in like the last couple times he's been out there, yeah, there's been like a mistake here and there. And yeah, you can just go like, oh, he's a young kid, whatever. But it was the same thing that I said last year. When he makes a mistake, he's not sitting there doing the fucking Charlie Brown, head down, walking away. He kind of just nuts up, and the next time a ball comes his way, he attacks it the same way. He's not scared. There's nothing where his like confidence has been shattered. And I have to attribute a lot of that to the coach. Because if you're at this point where you got a guy that it would be because we're in the baseball playoffs, and I know that John is going to clip this and send it to Mushin anyway, so I'm just going to make a baseball reference really to just shit on my own dinner. But if you have a pitcher that is going well and he just gets pulled in like the third inning, you're like, oh no, what happened there? But the manager has a plan, and it ends up working out in the end. And everybody's like, oh man, there's got to be this tension. But if the manager and the player actually talk and go like, hey, I saw that you were on that point where you didn't look, you were kind of shaky, and then you kind of just make that change, and you don't worry about the clash of egos or what the fucking rags are going to say the next day, and you talk to your player like an adult and just go, hey, this isn't me trying to like put you in a fucking freighter out the door. This is me looking at this moment going, I have to do this. And his response, I feel, has just been better than anybody could really ask for. And he got a contract extension to boot. So I think all in all, the way that Slot has put his stamp on this team is like you said, this is not Klopp's Liverpool anymore. This is Slot's Liverpool, and he has, I think, the respect of the players. He has the faith from the fans, and hopefully he gets the money from the ownership in January.
Well, I think there's no doubt that the team is now definitely Arnie's Slot, but when it comes to getting money, sometimes you got to negotiate, and sometimes you got to do it forcefully. Or at least that seems to be the plot of every single 1980s action movie that was made, which is what we're going to talk about now. Hey, so here's what we're going to, just for funzos, because it's International Week. There's a good selection there of some of the best franchises, let alone actual single movies, and also Tango and Cash is in there. But that's what we're going to talk about. But we're not going to do it in a simple, what do you think? What do you think? I am going to put a claim out there, boys, and you guys are going to have to argue if we start with Brian. My claim is that Die Hard is the epitome of the 80s action movie. Not only because it has a great plot and fantastic action and great wisecracks and memorable quotes that we still use to this day, but it also has Alan Rickman as the best German, British, German, English terrorist that has ever been conceived on celluloid. Bring me my detonators. So, Brian, that's my challenge to you. I will happily defend Die Hard as the best 80s action movie, but I'm willing to be convinced. So go ahead and convince me.
Man, that's a really difficult thing because we said prior to me the epitome of the action movies where there was Harrison Ford with all the Indiana Jones movies. I mean, Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's so epitome right there.
To be fair, there is also the Crystal Skull and the refrigerator.
Yeah, we're not going to go with the Crystal Skull right there. I have to say right there, hey, Crystal Skull got me with my fucking $12 to a movie theater. It was probably like the worst thing I ever saw right there as far as Indiana Jones. If you would
have been better off spending those dollars going into a fridge.
The only thing worse I saw then was Balls of Fury, which was probably even fucking worse than that. So I'm just gonna go on that right there. If you ever seen Balls of Fury, I'm sorry. If you haven't seen it, don't. So I mean that's an easy thing to say. But oh man, it's like yeah, definitely a Die. I understand where you go with the Die Hard movies, but also if they go with like 48 Hours right there was another one which has some great lines and stuff like that in there. I mean, it's really hard because there's so many action movies right there during the 80s. They watched. I mean, shit, I came to watch Time Cop the other day right there, and I was like, I was like, I mean, it's like it was on TV, and I was like, man, I haven't seen this in a while right there. I mean, I guess it's so hard because you had the whole Steven Seagal, you had Jean-Claude Van Damme, you had Mel Gibson, you had all these guys doing Arnold Schwarzenegger, you had so many different action things right there that were going on through the 80s and all. It's really hard to rate right there, those movies, because they each had their own like little niche right there. Die Hard was great. Die Hard 2, not so great. I mean, I know it's an argument right there. It goes like the argument with like, is Die Hard a Christmas movie, which I hear every single fucking time in the holiday season right there. It's like a constant argument about whether it's a Christmas movie, whether it's not, and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'll give you right there with Die Hard right there. But I mean, it's really hard to go in there actually to go and say because there's so many of those great things. I mean, Conan the Barbarian was a fantastic action movie right there. The Highlander. I mean, those movies were great action. I mean, sci-fi / action movies. So it's really hard right there. But I'll give you Mel Gibson.
I didn't say I wanted Mel Gibson.
Well, he's crazy enough. He's crazy enough. He might. I mean, you never know.
I'm gonna have to check my cupboards next. He might be living in one of those. Trevor, am I right? Let me throw some movies out there actually to even to spoil the broth a little bit more. I think Back to the Future could possibly be considered an action movie of sorts. That is a fantastic movie, let alone the action parts. There is also the Terminator. That is some. I because my job is writing and script writing, like I'm always reading books about how to be better at it, and you probably should actually read them more because it hasn't worked. But one of the things that stuck out for any writer of any genre is if you want to know how to write a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a resolution for the hero, watch an 80s action movie, because that era, Trevor, those movies stand the test of time because they were made precisely to tell a story, as opposed to now where action movies seem to be designed to set up a franchise.
Yeah, and that was a lovely bit of exposition, but now it's time for my Die Hard TED Talk. We're going to just go through how it is easily the best movie of my generation, any generation before or after. It is a Christmas movie. Anybody that tells you different is I'll just call them whatever negative person you want to just put them, whatever.
Allergic to facts.
You can just call them Declan Rice, where you can just whatever you want. That it is a movie where they took Bruce Willis, who was trying to do a absolutely horrendous music career in moonlighting, and turned him into the most badass fucking person on the planet. John McClane.
Just before you go any further there, Under the Boardwalk was quite a good rendition, I'll have you know.
I want to stick up for Bruce Willis at this stage of his life. He's not doing great, but yeah, that musical run, express yourself less. That it's
thank you for. I entirely had forgotten about that song, so I take back my previous comment now.
Yeah,
I just now remembered express yourself.
He's in the pool hall and he's doing the weird snaps and shit. Yeah, it's not great.
Stop! You put bad thoughts in my head. Stop.
Yeah, well, this is welcome to the party, pal. Then.
And that was the show for tonight, people. We apologize for Trevor. We will see you in a month.
Yeah, but that's a movie that turned Carl Winslow from Family Matters into an absolute badass. It's something where they turned a British theater actor into the most vile German villain of all time. And also Bill Clay, a British German doing an English accent, doing Bill Clay is the most greatest unintentional comedy of all time. Him talking about his suits in the elevator with Takagi is something that I don't know why I laugh at every time. But yeah, that movie, no notes, every single thing top to bottom. We can do a Patreon about Die Hard if you want, but yes, and I agree with Brian. Die Hard 2 is absolute dog shit. Thank the Lord that Die Hard 3 came out, because if Rennie Harlan starting that movie with the villain doing naked yoga as part of its like precursor to being the main antagonist of that movie was the death knell of Die Hard, everybody would have been deprived of Samuel L. Jackson as Zeus in the third installment. But yeah, out of all, I'm going to put a silver medalist in play because in terms of just nostalgia and the traditions in my household. Every Easter, everybody has their things and they do their stuff. Everybody watches certain movies around Christmas. Everybody watches certain movies around Thanksgiving, 4th of July, so on and so forth. But didn't really have an Easter edition. So me and my brother just started watching the movie Predator every year. And the movie Predator...
Get to the chopper!
Everything about that, if you're talking about just like super just Caucasian quotes to have over and over and over again, Predator is your fucking jam. And anybody who will try to contradict me on the quality of Predator for all of its flaws, you can just I don't know. I'll find some way to just dispose of you through like whatever. I'll just put like a random torture generator on a Google search, and we'll just figure out how to deal with you because yeah, Predator's an absolute gem. Die Hard #1. Bye.
Let me just spoil Predator a little bit for you. And it's because it ruined it for me when I loved that movie and watched it over and over again, mostly because my cousin worked in a video shop and he had all the copies of all the movies, the ones with little time codes underneath that you weren't supposed to watch, but he watched them. But when Carl Weathers gets killed and he gets his arm chopped off and does that turning around with the machine gun, you can see his elbow right there. It's right there. That was the poorest makeup job I've ever come across, but exactly what computer-generated graphics were made for, to be corrected in future Blu-ray editions. And also Die Hard in Germany is called The Hard, if anybody's interested. So Brian, let me throw another iron in the fire. Let me throw another silver medalist, possibly. It's one of the earliest ones, maybe, of the 80s action movies, but I love every second of it. And maybe the sequel, but after that, it just drops off the cliff. Beverly Hills Cop, the original one. Absolute, like, stunningly funny movie. everything you want to know about Eddie Murphy is in that movie. Plus, the only movie where Ronnie Cox doesn't play a villain in it. He actually plays the good guy because he's a fantastic villain. Which also, I'm going to throw another one in there, RoboCop. There you go. I mean, this could go on forever now. I might actually have to change my Die Hard choice from the start.
So the RoboCop thing right there, when I see people vaping, that's the only thing I think about with RoboCop right there. You know, like when they have that little liquid, the little liquid stuff, and all that, the things that everybody's addicted to. That's just fucking RoboCop. So I'm gonna go there and go with another one right there. Fucking Karate Kid and Karate Kid 2. Because Karate Kid 2 right there had so much action to it, so many different dramas, so many different things that went through it. So I mean, that's
and Peter Cetera.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. I mean, how many kids at my age came there, went to the school dance and danced right there to that song. I mean, everyone right there, middle school dance right there was the Peter Cetera affair. I mean, but I mean I think also go with the Rambo. I mean, because if you want to go with First Blood and Rambo right there, that's another action one right there that you have to go, which also goes into I know we talked about before the Rocky series, because there was some pretty good action right there, kind of dialogue. I know our views of Sylvester Stallone are kind of like that. I mean, at times and all that, but yeah. So I mean, it's just hard. Again, like I told you, it's so hard. I mean, because you think about these are all movies when you were kids that you you watched. I don't even think about weird ones like Gleaming the Cube. I mean, that's another one right there. That is definitely an action movie. I mean, you can. I mean, it's a pretty wide spectrum that you can go right there with the action movies and all that. Because the whole entire '80s was action movies. Gremlins, action movie. I mean, it's so deep right there. You can go. I mean, you can go with that, or you want to have like more adult themed action, or you want kid themed action, or teenage themed action. Because I mean, and it goes Goonies. Goonies was an action movie. I mean, those are. It's so hard to go in there to throw that genre because it's so wide. But I mean, it all identified us. I mean, because we all have the same sayings and stuff like that all the time. From like all these movies right there. And you have like the younger kids, like generation, the millennials and Gen Y. They look at you like, the fuck is this guy talking about? When you start quoting movies and all that, and they're looking at you like you got like three heads or something like that, and you didn't realize you were coddled by your parents and you didn't get to go there at action movies because you were watching Barney.
And another argument against homeschooling as well for kids not knowing these movies. Let me throw a cheesy one in there. I love this movie, but it's on YouTube. It might still be on YouTube. I may be wrong. But watching it back, it wasn't as great as it was, because I was a massive Karate Kid fan, and one of the biggest things about Karate Kid was everybody went to do karate afterwards. I'm from a poor part of Dublin, several poor parts of Dublin, so we didn't have middle school dances, but we did have fights, so that was good. But in the same vein, and you kind of accept it when you're 10 years old, but when you look back at it in your 40s, approaching 50s, the whole idea of Bruce Lee coming back as a ghost to teach you martial arts kind of spoils everything. But No Retreat, No Surrender, despite its horrific acting, also had the first appearance of Jean-Claude Van Damme, if I remember correctly, as the bad guy. I don't know how aware you two guys are of No Retreat, No Surrender, but if you're not, you should make yourself aware. What cheesy 80s action movie, so maybe the bottom end, in the same way that Mac and Me is the bottom end of E.T.
That's like a family joke to Mac and Me right there with him flying off a cliff in the fucking wheelchair, by the way. That's like an ongoing family joke amongst all of my wife's family.
Oh yeah. Paul Rudd's favorite movie.
And Paul Rudd's favorite movie, yeah, I was gonna say. But what cheesy 80s action movies, because there was a lot of ninja ones like American Ninja and the Sho Kosugi movies. But what really bad, but so bad they're good 80s movies, Trevor, do you remember, if any?
In terms of just like super cheesy, the one that you have in the VHS spread when you came in, The Last Boy Scout is another Bruce Willis classic. It starts with a scene that will jar people that didn't know things beforehand. Billy Blanks, the guy who did Tybo. He was just, you got this, you got all this. Within like the first 10 minutes of the movie, he's a football player and he blows his brains out. I'm not going to say spoiler alert, the movie is 30 years old. Shut up. Yeah, BX Gunner, you know what the fuck's up. It's one of those movies where it's just, you have a bunch of characters that have very little redeeming qualities, but you just get through all of it, and in the end, you have a good time. Another one, it's everybody kind of looks for Arnold for Predator and Terminator. Commando is an absolute just joy of a movie.
That is a brilliant movie.
It is a one-liner factory.
It is.
And
you said you wouldn't kill me, but you killed me last. I lied. And that has Alyssa Milano, doesn't it?
Yeah, she is the I believe
the very annoying daughter. I would have just left her there.
He's got the at the end where he kills the dude with the pipe and shit. It's just, yeah. He just has random rocket launchers for no particular reason. Commando,
you know
just
what?
absolutely.
All of those movies, they never had proper names. He's like John Matrix.
Yes,
in that movie. It was never like, Andrew Cunningham. Like Colonel Andrew Cunningham. Okay, what does he do spreadsheets?
And BX Gunner puts in Last Action Hero. That slipped into the 90s, but same deal. When I would go to the beach as a kid, there would be like little rocky crags, and we do the Last Action Hero jump where you had to try to like jump in slow motion, because that was the thing where it's like, oh, everything is done with the guy came to life out of the movie, and he thought everything was kind of, I'm just gonna do it in slow motion. Yeah, and that's how I fucked up my ankle for the first time, trying to jump from wet rocks to wet rocks in slow motion. And yeah, so Last Action Hero, though. So a thumbs up for that one as well.
So I've got Big Trouble in Little China, which is definitely yep, and also a cheesy fucking Roadhouse, man, with Patrick Swayze. So fucking bad right there of a movie right there. I mean, it's so unrealistic, and it's like and the bad. It's so bad that they actually made a repeat of it.
The remake's funny, but the remake sucks.
Yeah, but the thing is that the remake makes the original look good now.
Yeah, yes, exactly right there. But even with there, I mean, you could go like Con Air's another one that was pretty fucking bad right there.
Con Air was fun.
Get off the show. Get off the show.
Con Air was fun.
Con Air was fantastic.
I mean, get right there.
You can get in the backyard doing
Escape from New York. It's another one that through there. I mean, that was kind of really kind of cheesy.
The Snake Plissken series.
This guy gets it. This guy gets it. Or gal, but they get it.
Under Siege. That's another one that was pretty bad right there. I mean,
Brian, he was just the cook.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, if you've actually been on there and being in the Navy right there, and you see all this stuff, you're like, man, so this is beyond a fucking unrealistic. I mean, it's like it's not even close. Like it's like Battleship level from like the 2010s right there. You're like, okay, so we supposedly have some kind of weird laser things, and
Under Siege 2 territory is high class garbage, but. If you want to ruin your evening more than you have
Ooh.
Yeah, Bloodsport, Lionheart,
Yeah.
Van Damme. Yeah, Time Cop, Universal
Time Cop.
Soldier, all that
Yep.
stuff. Go look up the fact that Steven Seagal had a song called Strut, where he does I think it's like a half Russian, half Jamaican accent in like the first 30 seconds, and it somehow goes downhill from that. Yeah. Just any poor soul in the chat that finds us afterwards, go watch that, and yeah, you can just yell at me later because this is where I'm at in my life. I'm bringing you all down with me.
He did do that great Jamaican accent.
He knows the lyrics. He knows the lyrics.
Oh man, it doesn't get better than this Thursday night. That's why we're here. That's why we're here.
Hey, Over the Top. That's another one right there.
That is a great bad movie.
If I'm ever going to get custody of my kids, it's going to be entirely by arm wrestling. I'm not going to court. I'm just going to go. We're just going to get it done, and I'm going to. This is how I lose my child, because I have no upper body strength.
So before we wrap up tonight, let's do this one thing. We can go Schwarzenegger, we could go Stallone, we could go Gibson, we could go Willis, we could go who am I thinking of now? Who's the Christopher Lambert, Highlander, that guy?
Yeah.
Putting you on the spot, Brian and Trevor. We'll start with Brian. The best action hero movie actor of the 80s. Not necessarily the one with the most movies, but the one who did it the best.
Schwarzenegger. I mean, just off of the Terminator series. I mean, and then like again, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm definitely going to have to go. I mean, with Schwarzenegger.
Trevor, would you agree?
Yeah, I gotta agree. The catalog with Predator, Commando, Terminator, and then getting into that second string when Terminator 2 and then True Lies, Last Action Hero, all that stuff. For anybody that wants to crap on Arnold, though, that is a absolute just run for the ages. That is a Darwin Nunez hitting the bar run for the ages.
But I have to definitely give a silver medal right there to Stallone, because I mean Stallone right there from like his action thing to the same time right there was pretty high up.
Yeah, but I will give a hot take that the first two Rockies sucked, and until it got to Rocky 3 when it brought in Mr. T, Clubber Lang, and it was actually a boxing movie, and he was going at, "Hey woman," that's Rocky 3 is the best of the Rockies. And I'll go sign
But Judge Dredd, though, I mean, so you got to go with that.
Oh Jesus! Oh boy!
That's such a disappointment, that movie, from someone who read Judge Dredd religiously every week, and also submitted my pictures to 2000 AD, which they never printed, even though I was quite good at it. The bastards. But
bastards.
I'm gonna throw one name in the ring, which I think blows your choice of Schwarzenegger out of the ring. A hardy action hero who basically carried the movie all by himself and just unparalleled in toughness, and that is the kid in the wheelchair from Mac and Me. He fell down a cliff and then got back up.
He survived, and he didn't shit his pants in laughter when the dumb weird Cuber alien popped out of nowhere.
In green screen, by the way, because if you look at that, he's clearly not there. Yeah. We could do this all night. So let's hope for the next international break and we can go for 80s love movies.
That's until
and
November.
We haven't even mentioned Top Gun, thankfully, because I hate that movie.
No, we should.
I can't mention any fucking movie with that little slime ball in it right there. You know, I don't like anything he's ever done.
Kelly McGillis.
Oh, she's fine, but that little short little fucker. No,
but we can talk about Iceman.
But for those of you who follow this show every week and then await the next show after us, there's no Fantasy League show this week because there's no Fantasy League games to be worrying about because it's international break and the real soccer is not being played. But for everybody, and I think just before we end it all, I think this is probably the best point of the night. Is best role was in Tropic Thunder, and unfortunately, it wasn't made in the 80s because it would have included that because that is a fantastic movie in and of its own.
We did Risky Business.
We did, yeah. And we unfortunately all had to see
him
him
with
in
like
his
a big
underpants.
bald head and just yelling at a child, like a child gorilla was. That's it.
But we won't have a fantasy show next, but we will be back next week with the real soccer to look forward to, I hope. I mean, we will continue discussions like this on the next international break or even before, because who knows? It's our show. We can do what we want. But for everybody else, make sure you are following us on the YouTube, the Facebook, Instagram, X formerly known as Twitter, and join us on our Patreon. And as well as that, our Discord channel where you can see more of the madness. But it just remains to say, and the plant, you get to see more of the plant. It just remains to say, Brian, yippee-ki-yay, and Trevor, yippee-ki-yay. And we will see both of you guys hopefully next week. We will see everybody else next week. Like, smash, tap gently, caress or massage that like button and follow us. Alan's coming up with out of nowhere from the rear, the Triffid. I think that was the 1880s, Alan. That's how far back that was. But we will see everybody next week, and we will have more goodies, and we will hopefully have better news for Becker. We will have, obviously, a better report card for Arnie Slot because he's just doing fantastic stuff. And then we're all going to go and ask Jurgen Klopp for a job so we don't have to get up early in the mornings and we get paid anyway. But for everybody else, have a great one. Enjoy the weekend. Peace out. Here is the 70s power music.